Welcome to Podjunction Podcast, a podcast for podcasters who are wanting to use their podcast to grow their business. Bit of a mouthful.
Hang on. A podcast for podcasters who are looking to grow their business
using their podcast.
Sorry, say that again. A podcast for podcasters using their podcast to grow their business with a podcast.
No. You added that bit.
Oh, okay. There's a lot of podcasters.
Yes, a lot of podcasters. All right, wow. So this is the third of our 4-part series of insights from John Roman, who is the co-host of ASOM Pod. And in this particular episode, we are going to learn about how podcasting can serve multiple business goals.
I like how you had a little thing. I'm just going to pause. Hang on, what's this one about?
What was that one about? Yeah.
This is about podcasters who use podcasting to grow their podcast.
And their business. Through their podcast.
Through their podcast.
Yes.
Right.
And
I'm loving the new tagline, by the way.
You like it?
Yeah.
It keeps growing.
Just podcasters podcasting podcasts.
Yes. With podcasters. Okay, I'm going to stop. So point 2 that you're going to learn is the power of sharing industry wisdom.
Ooh.
And thirdly, how podcasts can be leveraged for unexpected opportunities for the business.
Oh, it's all a bit secretive. Dun, 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 dun. Oh, I like that. I'm looking forward to this one then. And You're doing this with John Roman?
Yes.
This is
part 3.
Part 3.
Yeah, 3.
John is such a legend. He is absolutely a legend. So I'm looking forward to this. So are we getting straight into it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, here's a clip.
So you've touched a little bit on this, but John, would you go into a bit more detail about what your primary goals are for ASOM Pod, both in terms of content and audience engagement?
Sure. So I would say there's multiple goals, right? So I don't think anybody's just going to disagree. Content is king, and building audience is key. It's a little bit the path to new customers is a lot easier with B2B in this play, right? If we're able to grow this, the amount of deal flow and funnel growth that Amir with Prella and Jimmy with Sendlane might see is probably a little bit greater than Brian with Own His Pride and myself with BattleBox.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something to take in mind, that it works a little bit less for the direct consumer brands.
Yeah.
But there's other goals, right? So my biggest thing that I enjoy is being able to, give wisdom and give best practices and concepts and things that can save other people time, right?
Yeah.
If I spent, TikTok, for example, when we launched it, we failed for 6 months. And there were so many learnings, and knowing what we know now, we could have probably figured it out in 2 months, but we didn't know that. So, talking about it, maybe I can, if it's just one person that understands and is like, I'm going to do this, and we're able to save 4 months of their time. Like, to me, that I get major satisfaction from that. So that's one element. The reality is, I would love for someone to listen and be like, oh, what is BattleBox? Oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
Hearing about John talk about the company, it's very, very clear that the customer experience is one of the most important things. And this could be something that I want to join. So absolutely hope for that. I think it also positions us as what we are, which is thought leaders in the space.
Yeah.
And there's value there as a merchant, with the two brands, Brian and myself on there. There's there'll become opportunity maybe for new tech that we can use. Maybe we'll get a discount, or maybe they'll want to sponsor and we can try it out. I think there's going to be little synergies like that that could absolutely be cool. So it's not one. It's such a clearer path if you're a B2B.
Yeah.
On growing the funnel, it's a little bit less. of a clear path, and there's multiple angles when you're actually a merchant.
Yeah. So in your case, then, what kind of benefits do you think you'll get out of, like for BattleBox in particular? I mean, get out of hosting Awesome Pod.
Yeah. So BattleBox in particular. So there's with the growth of audience, there's going to it's the rising tide. What is I don't even know what is it? Rising tide raises all ships. Rising tide lifts all boats.
Okay, close.
Okay.
Yeah.
So purely just getting BattleBox out there, and it's going in a means that we traditionally don't do, right? This isn't meta advertising. This isn't TikTok advertising.
Yeah.
You're going to get more eyeballs, and in general, more people to the website, and more people to the website, more people convert. So, absolutely will grow that. There's there's BattleBox. There's also Battle Brands, which owns BattleBox, and there's an arm of Battle Brands, which is Battle Ventures. Okay. So we've made so this year alone we've made two investments in SaaS companies. It's a very interesting investment criteria where we have to use the product. We have to like the product. We have to think that there's an edge with this product. And more importantly, we have to be able to be active and bring value. So it's not just dumb money. It's we think we can help in some aspect, whether it's finding them new customers or advisory. There's got to be a value we can bring, and it's got to be a great product that's actually in our tech stack. So we made two investments so far this year, and that those opportunities came from pure network, right? They just literally crossed the desk because of the relationships and network we've built, and I think this will allow that to grow further too. I think we'll see additional deal flow, additional opportunities. Is BattleBox in acquisition mode at the moment? Not necessarily, but I wouldn't say we ever are, but when opportunities arise, we typically act on them. So BattleBox has acquired a few brands through the years. Some have panned out, some have not. But again, all of those came through current network and current relationships. Never like a deal site or a business for sale site or anything like that. So I think, the deal flow of potential opportunities and partnerships, I think that increases as well. So I really think that this putting yourself out there, garnering, further audience, it really is just going to rise. The tide rises all boats, right? So it's not one boat, new deal, new customers. It's a bunch of boats.
Yeah.
And I think it's just getting the brand out there and getting myself out there will rise everything.
If that got you curious and you want to catch the full episode, be sure to subscribe to the show. We've got plenty more great conversations coming up.
Welcome back. What a legend John is. It was really interesting listening to him talk about how he's using the podcast for BattleBox, possibly, although that's not his main thing. Now, BattleBox, for those of you who don't know, this is John's company. It's a B2C company. So he sells direct to consumer. It's a subscription box, which is, I don't know if it's international, actually. I think it's just in the States. But there's a monthly subscription box called BattleBox, which you can subscribe to. And that's what he's talking about when he talks about BattleBox. And it's a great, and this is how I know John, through the fact he does subscription commerce. We hung out at Sub Summit recently, which is a big subscription show. Come check out Sub Summit 2025 if you're around. Dallas, Texas. I think it's in
Same
June.
place?
Yeah, same place, June. I don't know. Subsummit.com. Shout out to Sub Summit. Anyway, so that's what he's talking about, right? He's talking about his brand BattleBox and how some of the other podcasters on the show have B2B businesses. So they sell marketing services direct to, whatever. So it was interesting how he started off by saying that he thinks using podcasting or a podcast strategy like they're using with ASOM is going to be much better for those businesses, the B2B businesses, rather than his direct-to-consumer business.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because he was saying that for B2B, it's just a natural funnel, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas with the B2C, it's less direct, but still plenty of opportunity for brand awareness.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a slower burn. And he made a direct comparison with actually meta ads. So the standard thing in e-commerce, I suppose in any industry, I mean, I know e-commerce very well, but the standard thing is, you'll put in, say, $1,000 on Facebook or Meta or Instagram or whatever language you want to use. But you'll put $1,000 on that, and then you'll be able to see a return on investment. You can go, right, well, that $1,000 returned 20,000 website visitors, which in effect resulted in 100 new customers, which resulted in whatever sales. So I've got a return on, they call it return on ad spend, ROAS. So I've got a return on ad spend of, say, 2. So for every $1 I invest, I get $2 back.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful thing. You can't do that with podcasting.
It is a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing when it works. But you can't really do that with podcasting, it seems. And it's quite interesting how that works for John. So it's not easy to go and say, well, I've done this podcast, therefore I have bought in this many sales. You might see a sales uplift, but that could be 1,000,001 reasons, right? So it's not a direct, unless you publish, I don't know, some kind of code on your podcast, or you use specific URLs in your podcast show notes that people click, you can maybe measure it that way. Yeah. But yeah, it's a sort of general brand awareness that he talks about, which I think is really interesting for e-commerce businesses, actually.
Yeah.
That want to do podcasting or thinking about doing podcasting. Because I think he's right. The strategy for direct to consumer is different than B2B. So B2B podcasting for me is a no-brainer. We've talked about this. We've built a whole business around it. Podjunction is our company. It's a B2B company. We do B2B services. We help people set up, run their own podcasts. We teach them our methodology. We get them up and running, over 20 episodes, bam, away we go, right? Is that fair play?
That is fair play.
I've not cheapened that in any way?
No, not at all.
Good. Just as long as I'm clear. So it's really straightforward. So from a podcasting point of view, we use podcasting to grow that agency, to grow that business. And Podjunction is one of 2 podcasts we use to grow that business.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
And we can see that, we can track that, we can understand that and understand how that works. We have another company, several e-com companies, but we're this week, actually, Jen and I, who's the marketing director of that, well, it's a bit posh. Let's call her the marketing director. She is in charge of marketing for that e-com business. And so she and I are going to do some test podcasts, similar to Podjunction format. She's interviewed an expert. We're going to get together and chat about it. And that'll be much more brand awareness type stuff for her e-com business. And that's a strategy that we're going to use. So slightly different strategy for the e-com business and the direct-to-consumer. But I think it's a really great thing to use for brand awareness.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd be really curious to I don't know if you'd ever be able to find out how many people actually came to BattleBox because he's doing the ASOM podcast. There will definitely be some. I think if John wanted to do the straightforward brand awareness, then he would do a podcast more tied in with a theme of BattleBox as opposed to marketing, if that makes sense. But there will definitely be some crossover. Yeah. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah. He talked about thought leadership in that space, didn't he? So all 4 of them who are on ASOM Pod are kind of creating their space for expertise. So people are coming to them and then going back out to the different parts of of e-commerce that they represent.
Yeah.
Talking about thought leadership, how would you define that?
Thought leadership. Well, here's an interesting thing about those 4 guys doing the ASOM podcast, right? They're in a WhatsApp group.
Okay.
somehow I'm in that same WhatsApp group. John just said to me, yeah, I'll just come join the group. You'll enjoy it. I was like, okay, man. And it's a WhatsApp group where he's put together a bunch of people. And what they do is they do similar stuff to what we do. So they put out the podcast where they talk about stuff which is relevant to that industry.
Yeah.
People are interested in that. So just by talking about it, you're perceived as a thought leader, right? They publish that content, YouTube, the podcast, but they are prolific. And when I say prolific, I mean prolific at creating content on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Taking stuff from the podcast and putting it out there. I know because, in fact, if I pick up my phone now, I can tell you. Basically what happens is in this WhatsApp group, whenever you put a piece of content up, you put the link in the WhatsApp group. The people in the WhatsApp group will then go to whatever, LinkedIn and like it, for example. 35 unread messages.
Wow.
35. And that's from yesterday. So Matt Holman, he's put a link to his Twitter, X feed. Just picked up my phone and now someone's calling me. That's very rude. Let's just switch that off. Brian Max put a link on there to his LinkedIn. Then there's some comments going back and forth, just always very funny. But there's just link after link after link. So to be perceived as a thought leader, I think obviously you've got to have something useful to say. And these guys are actually very good. They are very good. They know their topic. But they are prolific at telling the world about that topic.
Yeah.
And I take my hat off to them. I think the consistency with which they're putting stuff out there is insane.
Really
and so I think a thought leader knows their stuff, but then in a polite way. You have to establish
yourself as a thought leader, don't you? You can
to
know your stuff, but not...
Yeah, I mean, you can know your stuff and post a blog every now and again, but the world doesn't know about it.
Yeah.
So to be which obviously you have thoughts about something, but to be a thought leader, I think people have to follow. Hence the word leader, right?
Yeah.
And leader it sort of implies there is a following, a group of people connected with what's going on. And I think you need both. You need to be able to have a say in that industry, but also promote and get that content out there. So I'd say we have thought leaderships or thought leadership in e-commerce because we've been doing that for a while. We've put content out there.
Yeah.
I think we probably are getting to a place where we could be classed as thought leaders in podcasting. Certainly in the niche that we operate in terms of using podcasts to grow your business. But we've got to build that following, right? To be perceived as a leader. And I think those guys do that super well.
Cool.
So that what you can do, just copy what John and the team do. Just set up WhatsApp groups, post your content, get a group of you together, post your content in there and all go and comment and like on each other's content. That starts to connect with the algorithm and it gets seen by more eyes, and it's actually quite a nice way to do it. And I think they've stumbled across it. I just think it's a nice thing that they do. I mean, a couple of groups that do the same thing.
Yeah, it's clever.
Yeah, very, very clever. I should definitely start posting more content on LinkedIn and letting the guys know about it.
Yeah, you should.
I should. But I'm just about to take August off, so it'll be in September.
So in September.
Yeah. The guys, if you're listening, guys, you're free until September. When September hits, man, you're not going to know what's hitting you. Messages every day from Matt. Here's my new piece of content. So yeah, does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Very good. What else?
Reading my notes from afar. What about what he said about helping other people save time by learning from your mistakes or from how you've done things? Because didn't he say his TikTok?
Oh yeah, the TikTok.
The launch didn't go well.
It's an interesting thing John was talking about there, because he said that he thinks B2B is the B2B guys will benefit more from Awesome Podcasts than he will.
Yeah.
But he will get some benefit from it. But he is doing it because he enjoys sharing his learnings. In other words, he enjoys sharing his teaching. I think this is another thing about thought leadership is you've got to enjoy teaching other people and helping other people.
Yeah.
And that usually means learning from your mistakes, right?
Yeah.
And that I think that's one of the things that drives John. He's been on quite a few of our podcasts. And the guy just adds insane value because this is what I learned. This is what I learned. Don't do what I did because I messed up there. But if you do what I did over here, that's where I had success. And I think he's very generous with his knowledge. And it used to be years ago that your knowledge was your IP, right? That's my IP.
Yeah.
So I'm not sharing it with the world. I'm going to share a little bit and then try and persuade you on the basis of that to buy my course, to buy, access to my mastermind or whatever it is. And I think, and that worked for a little while. We did it for a little while. But I think actually the world has changed. I think people like John and the awesome guys, and what we try and do is you just put out your best content.
Yeah.
It's not my IP anyway, really. I mean, it's not like I'm the only person in the world that knows this. Maybe the package which I put it together is my IP. And my experience is the more you tell people what to do, the more people come to you and go, great, can you do that for me?
Since you know what you're talking about.
Since you know what you're talking about, because I don't want to do it. I just don't want to do it. But you're not hiding anything from them. And I think this is probably the big change in thought leadership in content production. And people like John and the awesome guys, they put stuff out there. And there doesn't appear to be any firewall. There doesn't appear to be any kind of limit to what they're willing to share. And I think that's probably become our philosophy over the recent months, right?
Yeah, and I think people have changed in that way too. Like they're more reliant on recommendations by their peers. And as you're saying, like they'll happily let someone who knows what they're talking about do it because they're happy to go along with the research that's been done and just kind of submit to that. So I think it's both ways.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Yeah, but I think if you're going to do this, if you're going to do the podcast game, you've got to have a love for teaching and a love for sharing knowledge, because I think that's what that's what you want to come across in your podcast. You want people to get value out of it.
Yeah.
Now, whether that comes from you or an expert guest or whatever, you want people to get value out of it. And I think that that love and that passion for that, the desire to help people through the channels and mechanisms that you have, I think people will see that. If it's authentic, if it's genuine, you're definitely going to get clients as a result of it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's been times when I've sat down, not necessarily on the podcast, but I remember the first time I realized actually that I'd got it slightly wrong with content. In other words, I was trying to hide stuff back behind a firewall. Was I remember sat down with one client in the office in our old warehouse, big old whiteboard on the wall, and I just decided to map out everything. And it took like 3 or 4 hours, and I'm like, so there's your strategy. That's what I think you should go to.
Yeah.
And this is our, in effect, how we would do it. So I'm telling you now, you can write all this down, you can walk out of here and you can go and do that. And that's when he turned around to me and he said, great, when do we start? And I was like, wow, because I was very nervous about telling them everything that I knew, because I thought they were just going to take my knowledge and walk off.
Yeah.
But he didn't. He was just like, yeah, I know this is what I want you to do. And so it's a really fascinating way how that works. And I think, yes, there are people that will rip off what you know. But to be honest with you, let them. Because it's like, what are you going to... There's enough fish out there. And I'm not too concerned about it. I think, So I think for us, lessons learned here, but the things for me after August...
Yeah. Watch out, world.
Yeah, watch out, world. I think we'll be putting more content out there into the world. We'll be putting more stuff on LinkedIn, more stuff on Instagram. All the courses that we used to charge for are going to be made available for free on the site. We'll probably ask for an email just to grow our email list through it. But there's a company, I've not mentioned this to you, but there's a company called, or maybe I have, Shaper. Shaper make woodwork tools. They make this really clever router, handheld CNC machine, which if you're not into woodwork, you're not going to have a clue what I'm talking about. But trust me, it's really clever. It's a really clever machine. And the way they do content is really, really sweet. And I look at them and I think, actually, you've now become very apt at doing this. And they live stream once every couple of weeks, showing you how to do something with that tool. A lot of stuff on Reels, a lot of stuff on Instagram. They give you access. They've got a community where if I design something, I can put those design files onto the community hub. People can download them, which is great. So I share a lot of stuff that way that I've designed. I borrow other people's designs and use them on my furniture that I make. And then they have these mastermind classes, which are they're great. You have to put in your email to get them. And the way they film them and shoot them and do them is just so nice. And so, yeah, I think really clever way of doing content and being a thought leader in that space.
Yeah.
So you can learn a lot from woodwork. Woodworkers rock, man.
Oh boy.
Yeah. I don't know what to say to that.
No, I don't.
Oh, just totally gone off on one there, Matt. You've totally thrown me. Yeah.
But yeah, it was good. I
Very
enjoyed
good.
that one.
Yeah. So I guess challenge. How do you do your content? What can you learn from this? How do you help people grow? And think about, what John said in relation, if you're B2B or if you're direct to consumer, how that's going to work for you. But yeah, I loved it. I just love listening. I can listen to John all day. Such a legend.
He'll be happy to hear that.
Yeah, I'm not going to, John, but I could. Because that might be a little bit weird, actually. Thinking that through. Yeah, I think that's going to be... Yeah, maybe. I'm a subscriber to the podcast, and I listen to it. And I'm on the WhatsApp group.
Once a week.
Awesome. So, is there anything else we want to talk about on this one?
No.
What's coming up next week, then?
So, next week is part 4. Fourth and final. One from John Roman. So, yeah, that'll be good.
Great. So, we're going to hear from John again next week. Make sure you like and subscribe to the show, wherever you get your podcast from, obviously, because you're not going to want to miss part 4. And if you've not listened to parts 1 or 2 yet, is that because you're new to the show? A very warm welcome to you. Or is it because you're an existing subscriber and you've just gone, I can't be bothered to listen to the first 2? I would strongly recommend going back and listening to those 2. But then that's just me, So, but yeah, make sure you like and subscribe, because we'll be back next week for part 4 with John Roman. But unless there's anything else from you?
Nope.
That's it from me. That's it from the fabulous one sat next to me right here. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode at Podjunction. If you've enjoyed the insights from this episode and want to hear the full conversation with today's special guest, don't forget to visit podjunction.com, where you'll find more information about how you can join Podjunction cohort. Whether you listened while on the go or in a quiet moment, thank you for letting us be a part of your day. Remember, every episode is a chance to gain insights and to transform your business with podcasting. So keep on tuning in, keep on learning, and until next time, happy podcasting.